All right, everybody, welcome in. Welcome to the Swishlist Podcast, Season 2, Episode 9. We are so excited to be here today. We got a lot to talk about, And we're going to dive into a lot of different topics. We're going to talk about the NBA scoring, right? Is it good to see all these people scoring 60? Are you desensitized to it yet? I don't know. We're going to talk about the All-Star game. The starters have been announced. How do we feel about it? Who got snubbed? Is it really getting snubbed? We're going to talk about what it really means. And then we're going to give some shout outs to a couple players, and we have to address the Milwaukee Bucks situation. All of this and a lot more on this episode of the Swishlist Podcast. Roman, it's good to have you here. A double overtime game, a double overtime win on Tuesday, and then you turn around and another game Friday. And I've always been curious. Right? We always hear people like, man, not sure if these guys are going to be able to come back after an overtime game. And I know you're not in the pros, you're not 35 years old, you're a young guy, but did you feel like that next day at practice or the game a couple days later, do you feel like it had an effect at all on you or the team?
The day after is the difference maker. When you have a back-to-back, like I can imagine NBA level of back-to-back, but even at our level in college, back-to-backs they're tough and they show up. When you lose in a back-to-back, it's usually because your effort wasn't there and it played a team who's had a few days rest and stuff like that. You can feel it after that first game. Like trying to get ready for your second game, like walkthroughs, your legs are already tired. You're just not really, you don't feel ready for a game. Like it wasn't a practice the day before it was a game. And yeah, so it is pretty tough. But when you have a few days in between, coaches usually chill out on a practice, try and do more walkthrough type stuff. So it's more of an adjustment than it is a learning curve at this point. So the back-to-backs are tough, but when there's a few days in between, it's usually pretty good. And we're all good about icing and stuff like that. So the recovery's there.
Speaking of back-to-backs, we saw back-to-back 60-point games, 70-point games. This last week has been absolutely insane. Let's start by talking about the scoring. Embiid goes crazy. Karl-Anthony Towns gets called out by his coach for his scoring. Luka Doncic, there's a clip going around where nobody even plays defense and he dribbles up the entire court for a layup. Devin Booker puts up 50, 60 in losses. What is happening in the NBA right now? The heck is going on?
I don't know if it's just because Kobe dropped 81 in this week years ago. If it has to do with just his passing, but I feel like there's some Kobe energy coming down on all these players, and because four in 1 week is absolutely insane. Like when I saw Joel, he got 70, and then it was like I get this notification like, oh, Cat's got 44 at half. At half,
Yeah.
it was like the same moment. They were like, oh, Joel's got 56 on 28 minutes, and it just kept getting better. There's definitely some Kobe magic getting trickled into this because this is just unheard of.
This is the week of no defense. No, it's pretty crazy to see. And it made me think, like, is 80 the new 70? Like, is scoring 80 points the new 70-point game? Because I think the stat is in the last 13 months, we've seen, I want to say, over 8 60-point games. And we had seen that many in like the last 20 years or something before that. Just these crazy statistics around all the scoring. And I did a little bit of research, okay? Because I was like, what's actually going on here? And maybe what we need to see is we need to switch up the game ball. We need to bring the Spalding game ball back to the NBA. That's right. The Spalding contract as the official basketball of the NBA ended in the 2020-2021 season. And conveniently, when the NBA switched to the Wilson basketball, which is now the official basketball of the NBA, we're seeing too much scoring. Do we need to go back to a Spalding? That might be the answer. That's probably the only answer I can come up with that doesn't impact the players, because this is just, it's insane. It's absolutely crazy. And I almost feel like we're desensitized to these scoring performances. When you get a notification for Karl-Anthony Towns scoring these points, are you rushing to the television to see what he's going to do in the second half? Or are you like, wow, that's crazy. I'm gonna keep
Usually when
scrolling.
somebody has a half like that, they proceed to only drop 15 points in the second half, which is kind of
Sure.
what Karl Anthony Towns did. I don't even think he
Yeah.
got 20 in the second half. So it was a bit of a disappointment. But yeah, when I see like if I don't catch a game and I see the game report and
Hmm.
somebody had 50 points, 50 is like the new 35. Like I'm just like, oh, he had 50. That's a really good game. He scores 60 and it's like, oh, okay. But, like, you see somebody score 60 even 7 years 5 years ago, like, it was like, "Oh, he went for 60." But, like,
Yeah.
yeah, 70 is definitely it's definitely less of an accomplishment now because Donovan Mitchell did it, Dame did it, like, last season, and they were, like, one after another, so it's just
Yeah.
it's becoming less and less of an importance.
I mean, even Giannis at 60. It's getting pretty crazy. It just makes me wonder, is this level of scoring bad for the league? Like, how much of it is, hey, these guys are just way too gifted versus we're just not seeing the same level of defense this close to the trade deadline. I'm not sure. But I do believe that fans are desensitized to the scoring. And it's like if you get a notification that Luka's got on pace to score over 80 points and that doesn't get you to a television, what's going to get you there? You know what I mean? Like what's actually going to get you to want to watch a game in the middle of January? I'm not sure. But this much scoring is crazy. I know you mentioned Damian Lillard. Let's start talking about some of these all-star starters. It feels like there are a few players that everybody universally can accept as an all-star starter, right? No complaints, no criticism. But then there's some others that NBA fans are up in arms, questioning how in the world people like Damian Lillard are an all-star starter. And it makes me wonder, and we talked about this before, like, do people actually know how you become an all-star starter? Roman, enlighten anybody that may not be aware of how that works.
So for the people who don't know, the ratios is 50% fan vote and the other 50% is player/media.
Yeah.
So half of the votes is just coming from anybody who wants to log onto the NBA app and vote for their favorite player.
Hmm.
And I think people forget this and they just think that it's players and media who are voting these players in. And we talked about this before, like you said, Dame is a household name more
Oh
than
yeah,
any other point
one of
guard
the
in the league.
biggest.
He's the only one that really makes sense to be that all-star starter point guard for that side. People were saying, "How does he get it over Jalen Brunson?" And again, his numbers are great, but like we were talking about before, he's not the household name that Dame is. People were gonna talk about Dame no matter what, and 50% of the votes, that's gonna sway towards Dame every single time.
Yep, I agree. Like, we're not having the conversation about who statistically has been better up to this point in the season. Even though Jalen Brunson plays for the New York Knicks, he's just not. He's not a known guy. Like he's not a household name the same way that Damian Lillard is. Damian Lillard has done this. The only reason he hasn't been a starter in the past is because Steph Curry existed. It's the only reason. Jalen Brunson, even though he's in New York, he's not a household name. Like you, nobody really knows who this guy is. If you're an NBA fan, you do, but somebody on the street doesn't. Same thing with Trey Young. Like these guys, they just don't have that cachet quite yet. Where Dame, I mean, you're talking about what people regard as the second greatest shooting point guard in the history of the league with multiple playoff game winners, viral hits, the best rapper in the league for what it's worth. Like this guy, he's been in 2K. He's been in the video games. He's had cameos in the games. Like it's more than just basketball with Dame. So of course he's going to be the all-star starter. And let's also not forget Thanasis Antetokounmpo got an all-star starter vote from a player.
Zaza Pachulia almost they had to shift the votes because Zaza was gonna be an all-star starter.
Steven Adams got 3 all-star starter votes this year from players.
Hasn't touched the
So
court.
don't get it twisted. Let's not act like the players are just so locked in to figure this stuff out. No. Of course LeBron's going to be an all-star starter. Kobe Bryant was starting all-star games when he was in what? Year 20.
20.
At the end of his career, he was still an all-star starter. Dirk Nowitzki. You think these guys should have been all-star starters? No. No, of course not. But it's the all-star game. You guys are acting like this is real basketball. This isn't going to be a real game. We know
They're
what we're
not
going
even
to
gonna
see on
try.
television. Nobody's going to try. So why are you so upset about it? Also, how many times do you hear anybody arguing how great a player is all time? The only stat you're talking about is whether or not they made it to be an all-star, if even that. So,
Yeah, if that.
like, pump the brakes, everybody. Now, with that being said, this is the first time Steph hasn't been an all-star starter in what feels like 10 plus years.
Yeah, if Steph Curry's healthy, he's been an all-star starter every single year since like 2013. So
Mm-hmm.
the Warriors are not the team that everybody thought they were going to be.
No.
Steph is still putting up incredible numbers, but again, his team has just not put him on the map like they usually do. So he'll definitely be an all-star, but he'll just be coming off the bench this time.
And hey, the report came out that the Warriors would be willing to break up the team if Steph agrees. They very clearly stated that, hey, if we're trading somebody, it's because Steph approved it. Don't go pointing the finger at us.
Well,
And
this
I
is the
don't
thing
know.
with Steph. He's not in the media like a lot of other players are. Like you don't see Steph going on podcasts, well, sometimes you do, but I feel like a lot less than other players. So is there anybody who knows how he feels about Draymond, about Clay? Like I don't know what it looks like that situation.
Not really, because Steph's a professional, right? Like he handles his business like a professional. Even the way he addressed LeBron after they lost to the Lakers, hey, how do we keep getting better? And then you could tell he was upset. I mean, he ripped his jersey after, but Steph is a professional. And so no, you're probably not gonna know. You're probably not gonna know from him. He's not gonna pull LeBron where LeBron's gonna be cryptic with the media and say this, that, and the other, and then trade half the team. Like Steph's just not that kind of a guy. The only time that Steph blows up on social media for something that's said on a podcast is when his wife is exposing him for liking her feet or something. That's the only time. That's the only time. Okay. It's Aisha saying something crazy in the media. Okay. As long as she's not doing that, then Steph is fine. That's a wild one. To get us back on track, to get us back on track. There's a point guard in the East that you've been really excited about. He's been showing up and showing out, and so is his team. That's the New York Knicks point guard, Jalen Brunson. We talked a little bit about him. He's not an all-star starter behind Damian Lillard, but he has been incredible. Roman, what do you think's the secret to the Knicks' success, and why is Jalen Brunson impressing you so much?
Jalen Brunson has figured it out. He doesn't just have to lean on somebody. He can take over a game. I mean,
Mm.
with the stats I've been seeing, the guy has put up 30 plus points in 8 of his last 10 games, and I think Julius Randle finally figured out how to play basketball again, how to be productive for this team. I mean, unfortunately, he dislocated his shoulder. He'll be out for the next week or two, I think. I think they figured out how to play together with Mitchell Robertson going down early on in the season. I thought, oh, they're doomed. They don't have their big man presence anymore. Uh, he was probably one of the best rebounders in the NBA. I thought that
Mm.
was really going to hurt them, but Hardenstein has been playing amazing for them. It seemed like the OG trade has been working out for them. Obviously, it has. January has been an amazing month for the Knicks. So I just think the pieces that they have been working out. The chemistry is building and getting better.
So there's a couple of things that I want to talk about here, right? When you're looking at the average scoring in the NBA in the 2022-2023 season, the one we're in right now, teams are scoring on average 114.2 points per game, which is the ninth highest mark in the history of the league. Now, I know you probably thought that this was scoring we've never seen in the history of the world. Guys, in 1970, teams were scoring 116 points a game. So we've seen crazy scoring in the NBA. This isn't the first time this has ever happened. But where we tie this back in is when you look at the Knicks' last games, they held a team to 92, 84, 100, 94, 94, 94, 84. Right? These are the types of scoring performances we saw in the mid 90s. Right? Low scoring games in terms of how they're holding their opponents. But in just about every single one of those games, they're scoring over 100 points. They're holding pace to the average. And so defensively, this team is locked in. OG brought a defensive presence that they may not have had before. And Jalen Brunson is scoring the ball efficiently and effectively along with Julius Randle. But I want to point to something with Julius Randle because you mentioned he's got a shoulder issue, right?
Dislocated it.
Dislocated shoulder. And I'm not saying that he doesn't have a dislocated shoulder. I'm not going to come on this podcast and start a conspiracy theory that man's hurt. But if you are injured, you can't get traded. If you are injured, you cannot get traded. And Julius Randle has been suspect on the court and then all of a sudden started to turn up. That man doesn't want to get traded. He loves it in New York. And so I'm not saying he faked an injury. But if I'm a Lakers point guard and I just saw a report that Austin Reeves is seen as a much more long-term piece than myself, and my name is D'Angelo Russell, I've been balling out the past couple weeks. Maybe it's time to tweak the knee a little bit. You know, you want to stay in LA? Hey, tweak the knee.
Yeah,
Teams,
my ankle's bothering me.
Hey, if these trainers want to come tell you can't play because they think you need rest, call your own shot. Call your own rest. Call your own injury. Maybe that's the answer. Hey, you can't move me if I can't play.
A certain Lakers point guard just might want to do this.
A certain Lakers point guard, it might be a good idea for you, or else you might end up in NBA Siberia.
D'Angelo, that would be, he's the type of player that would happen to.
Yeah, he is.
His on and off games are crazy, but hey, the man has been balling. The Warriors game was hilarious. The shots that he was throwing up, like this dude's career in LA is on the line, and he is throwing up some threes, and they're falling. So,
have you ever seen a
the man
zestier
showed up.
3-point shot than when he kicks up his leg like that? That's the zestiest 3-point shot I've ever seen in my life. That is crazy. That is
D'Lo's
crazy.
Sometimes he looks super smooth, and then he'll go and do something. You're like,
that doesn't look like what you think it does. Yeah.
We love D'Lo here. We love D'Lo.
Just absolutely wild. Okay, so look, man, you don't want to get traded. Maybe you got to do a little something. Okay, we've pushed it off long enough. It's probably time to talk about it. The Milwaukee Bucks, the number 2 team in the East, my favorite to win the NBA title this season. They fired their head coach, and
while he was second in the East,
first season, just signed a contract. And they signed Doc Rivers. That means that the Milwaukee Bucks are paying 3 head coaching salaries right now. 3 of them. What have you heard about the firing, and do you like Doc Rivers as the new head coach?
There was that one Giannis interview where he's like, I love the guy. I wish him nothing but the best. But again, that seems like media tricks.
Oh, 100% it is. 100% it is.
Maybe the whole team had a meeting, which is what I'm assuming happened, and they were just like, we don't like this guy as our coach. I mean, they've got plenty of vets on that team who have been doing this for 10 plus years, who could have just been like, we don't like his coaching style. Don't think he's going to help us get to a championship.
Here's some of the official reports.
Okay.
Right. So one of the assistant coaches was Terry Stotts. Okay. Terry Stotts had previously coached the Milwaukee Bucks. So the fact that he would even come back and be an assistant coach on the staff is a big deal. For those of you who don't know, he was a longtime coach, a head coach for the Portland Trailblazers with Damian Lillard. And so he ends up being an assistant coach on that staff. And he got into it with their previous head coach, with Adrian Griffin. They got into it. And Terry quit. He walked away. He said he wasn't going to do it anymore. Wasn't going to deal with that guy. And so that caused some issues in the locker room. We've also seen Giannis call his own plays, check himself back into games or in and out of games. So the respect level doesn't seem like it's really been there from the team. Not to mention that their defensive rating had dropped from 9 down to the mid-20s. They were one of the worst defensive teams in the league. A team that has prided themselves on defense the past few seasons. And when they wanted to go back to some of their old sets, they've had issues. Now, when he got hired in the first place, the Bucks were interviewing Nick Nurse. Giannis specifically did not want Nick Nurse to be the coach. A lot of people believe that he endorsed Griffin because he was on Nick Nurse's staff and they could get somebody but not have Nick Nurse be the coach. Giannis did not want Nick Nurse to be the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. I personally believe that Giannis, in an attempt to still maintain the wonder boy of the league status that he has, he gets up on the podium and he says, "Hey, I don't have a problem with him. He's a good man. He was at my wedding. He was this, he was that, he was the other." But the fact of the matter is the Milwaukee Bucks are not firing a coach without talking to Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's just not going to happen. And so that's why we see a head coach with this level. We haven't seen a coach like this get fired since David Blatt with LeBron in Cleveland get fired this quickly with this good of a record. But I think there was a lot of friction in the organization with the way that this guy was choosing to manage the team. Now, you don't fire your coach mid-season without having somebody that you would bring in. Had Stotts not quit, he would have probably been the coach. But because he was out, they aggressively pursued Doc Rivers. There were some concerns that maybe Doc Rivers would get scooped up by the Lakers, and so Milwaukee made an aggressive move now because they knew they could get him. I personally am not against Doc Rivers' hire. I think Doc Rivers is a quality coach. And it's not like it's his fault that teams can't score it's not like it's his fault that Chris Paul couldn't stay healthy in the playoffs, or that Blake Griffin couldn't score the basketball efficiently. It's not his fault that Embiid chokes in the playoffs. Like, sure, I understand that there have been game management situations that have fallen on his shoulders, but he's not on the court. Okay, he's not playing like he did for the Hawks or something, or Houston. Like, he's a coach. How much better were you really going? Like, who were you going to find that was going to be that much better on the open market? I'm not sure. But people questioning, why does Doc Rivers keep getting these jobs? He hasn't won a championship since. Well, guess what? He also won a championship in 2008. He has led all-star MVP level players in the past, and he's won at the highest level. And there's a lot of coaches that get hired that haven't. And even though, sure, it was in 2008, and that was a long time ago in terms of this league, he still has that cachet. He still led deep playoff runs, and they're also going to be probably facing the 76ers in the playoffs this year. And so you get a guy out of the building that's causing some culture issues because, sure, you might be able to beat a team on a Tuesday night today, but you're not beating a team in the playoffs if you've got culture issues. So you get him out. You give yourself enough time from the All-Star break to figure out your adjustments, your lineup, what the new offense is going to be, etc. And you go and you try and make a run.
Doc Rivers is interesting. I know you have them as the favorite, so it's pretty easy for you to say that he's going to be a good hire.
I have to stand by my pick. I'm not going
Yeah.
to go back on my pick. Unless Giannis breaks his leg, I have to stay by my pick.
Yeah, this is my thing with them is if Brook Lopez plays like a defensive player of the year, like he did, if Giannis averages 30 and if Dame averages 30, this team wins. That's the perfect situation for Doc. But I don't see that happening, and I think this team will lose in the Eastern Conference Finals.
To who?
Celtics. Easily.
Oh, easily. Wow. Okay.
6 games. 6 games. Doc Rivers masterclass. And if he doesn't win with this team, I don't know if Doc Rivers gets another coaching job after that.
Probably not with a contender. Let's just wait and see what happens after the trade deadline because buyout season is upon us. Like, and we've seen what happens around this time of the year. Last year, Russell Westbrook was a major acquisition for the Clippers, right? Like, there can be some veteran players, some quality additions that end up in buyouts that Milwaukee would be primed and in prime position to pick up and round out the roster. This was something that I was talking about when the season started is, hey, what this roster looks like today is not what it's going to look like going into the playoffs. Now, I didn't expect a coaching change, but I believe that there's more moves that Milwaukee's going to make. I don't think they're going to make a trade, but I would like to see them in the buyout market, picking up a couple veterans to round out the bench. I think that's critical to this team being able to overcome the Boston Celtics, who, to your point, have been dominant, but the Derek White All-Star run is probably over. He's had a below average month. He's kind of come back to reality a little bit. So you hope that he plays at that level in the playoffs, that you've rounded out the bench and you give him a go. Jaylen Brown still can't dribble with his left hand, and you see what happens. But I stand by the pick. I think Doc Rivers is going to be a better coach than a first-year coach based on the experience of this team. And I believe in the players. That's where my stock is. I believe in Giannis.
That's what's most important.
That's what's most important. And if anybody wants to come in here and say that it's not, go look at Greg Popovich. Did he forget how to coach?
Monty Williams.
Did they just forget how to coach, or did they have Hall of Fame players? Look what happened to Phil Jackson. Did he forget how to run an organization? Did he forget how to coach? Or did he not have Hall of Fame players? I mean, Carmelo's not a winner. A conversation for another day. You guys get the point, right? Like, these are Hall of Fame players. Keep them healthy, get their minds right, round out the roster so they've got the support that they need. They've got veteran guys that can knock down shots. And I don't want to see a PJ Tucker or that kind of garbage. Go get some real role players, okay? This isn't 2018. Go get somebody legit.
PJ Tucker's corner shot is not enough. Corner shot and trying to play defense on Kevin Durant is not enough.
It's not enough for the Boston Celtics, because I'll tell you what, he's going to be in foul trouble if he tries to guard Tatum. He's going to be sitting on the bench with 4 fouls and 2 points, if that.
Yep, second quarter, 4
Tatum's
fouls.
going to put him in the spin cycle, dunk on his head, and PJ's going to do his signature hands over his head. Come on, Mr. Ninja Turtle. We don't need him in there, all right? Go get me some real bench players, round out the roster. Let's make a run. And if you're lucky,
Bucks, Celtics, Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, if you're lucky, Boston gets Philly. Somehow, Boston ends up playing Philly instead of you getting Philly, and maybe you see something happen, a 7-game series, and you get somebody.
Out, yeah.
You get like the Knicks, an overachieving Knicks team, an overachieving Cleveland team, and you got 2 games rest. You finish them in 5. You got a couple games rest, and there's your path to the finals, right? There's your path. And if they get the Denver Nuggets, I think that's a team that they can't match up against Giannis. And I think that's a path to the championship.
Even though the Nuggets just beat the Bucks tonight. That was Jamal Murray's doing, though. The man had almost 40.
It's Monday, January 29th.
The most mid of the season can get.
I don't care. It is Monday, January 29th. Let me tell you something.
That is the most middle of the season you can get.
Let me tell you something, man. You ever have a vacation on the calendar you're excited to go on?
Yeah.
Your family's going to Mexico. When you're a kid, you're going to Disneyland, Disney World. That week before, when you're still in school, when you're still at the office, when you're still going to class, you're not locked in.
Daydreaming.
You're not locked in.
Every thought is about that next week.
Let me tell you something. Half these guys are on the beach in Cancun right now in their minds. Come on.
That's very true.
Come on. If you're not in the All-Star game, you're getting some R&R. That's rest and relaxation. All right? Okay? So we're not taking a January 29th game when they're only going to play each other 2 times in the regular season.
Doc Rivers' first game as well.
I'm not looking at this and all of a sudden saying That's going to define an NBA Finals matchup if these two play against each other. I'm not 11 years old, Roman. All
Now, if
right.
Doc Rivers lost his first game coaching the team, they're doomed. They are
It's
doomed
not cooked. It's not cooked. In fact,
against the former NBA
you
champion.
probably want to lose to him right now. You probably want to lose to him right now.
Make him feel
Hey,
good.
we're still figuring it out. You want to be the underdog. You want that underdog mentality. That's how they got clapped last season by Miami. They
That
thought
is
they were
exactly
something.
how it happened.
Mhm. Mhm. We're gonna put some respect on the Bucks. Um, in fun and exciting news, somebody finally asked Paul George how he feels about having his own theme song, and I
Love
loved
the
it.
song. Yep.
Didn't You Know by Erica Badu. What an elite signature song. And
Perfect.
Paul George, he had to have been ready for this question because his response was just
He
so
definitely
good.
was. He was ready for it. He's been
He's
prepared.
he said, what did he say? He said, I always consider basketball like dancing, and I'm always ready to tango.
Oh,
Oh my gosh. Oh
planned.
my god.
Planned but perfect. Planned but perfect. And then somebody made an edit immediately after
Perfect
you started out,
execution.
him saying
Yep.
that, and then it cuts right to the song. Just beautiful. It's the perfect theme song. It was the perfect interview. It was the perfect edit. Good job, Paul George. Shout out.
What we need more signature songs for players. Like, how do we
Definitely.
like how it was it was just so perfect. It was perfect. How can we like it we need this. Like more players
People
need signature
try.
songs.
Like, people will put songs over certain players, and it just sometimes it fits, but it doesn't stick. But the Paul George one is just it's just always stuck. So there's bound to be more in the future, but Paul George is just stuck.
I saw Draymond Green knock AD in the face just recently. He's back on that same BS. What would be a good theme song for a player like
Like a
Draymond
Draymond.
Green? It's probably an NBA YoungBoy song.
No, Ja's got NBA YoungBoy covered.
That's true. No, you're right.
Ja's got Ja's got YoungBoy.
He's certified. That's copyrighted.
Maybe a NLE Choppa song.
Wow. Okay.
It doesn't seem like Draymond's style though. I don't know.
It really like it's hard to think like what fits a guy
Draymond's
that just
so unique.
wants to relentlessly mug people every night
Step on somebody's chest, knock
and
somebody in the head.
then jumps on his podcast and is shocked that he will not be playing on Team USA this year. Shocked. I think
As
you've
if he didn't try and murder a few players.
I think he's hit more people than three-pointers this season. That's probably why you're not playing on Team USA. If you hit more people than threes,
Out of
you
control.
you're in the wrong league. It's called the WWE. It's called
Oh, that would be amazing.
and I think and I wouldn't be surprised if we could see him there.
NBA WWE collab. Draymond Green. Oh, that would be perfect. Oh, that would be great.
Maybe his theme song is the John Cena. It's John Cena.
Yes. Now we're getting
And it's just
closer.
him coming out of nowhere and punching AD in the face.
Stomping on somebody's chest. Yeah, that's it.
Hilarious.
That's it.
Cam Whitmore. Never thought that name would make it to the podcast. You've been a fan. Why?
The
This is like
dude
our
is
player highlight. This is like
balling
our
out.
player highlight. He's balling out.
Player Shout out Cam Whitmore. His draft stock dropped a bunch. I mean, I remember early on this guy was supposed to be a lottery pick, and it was just like name after name kept coming up. I don't know if his interviews were
Mhm.
bad, what was going on, but this guy ended up being late first round for some reason, dropped to the Rockets. Has spent some time in the G League, put up great numbers, but the past few games he's been great. They played the Lakers tonight. He had some emphatic dunks. Tonight the man had 20 points in 19 minutes.
Mm.
You do that, that's an incredible night. Your efficiency is amazing. And then a few nights ago against the Hornets, he put up 24 points in 20 minutes. So the guy has just been electric for the team. He's been helping them win, even though they're about even as of right now. But he's been great off the bench for them, and I would look for him to have more of a role for the Rockets.
What a guy. Cam Whitmore.
Explosive,
I'm
amazing
gonna
player.
go the opposite way. A player that really disappointed me. We watched Embiid score 70, Cat 60, Tristan Thompson with 4 points. And when the NBA looked at all those games, they said, Tristan Thompson, 4 points? That's gotta be steroids, baby. And they were right. Tristan Thompson
I forgot.
slammed for steroid use, banned from the league for 25 games. Tristan, it's time to go back to ESPN. Okay, it's over.
What was he doing?
Taking steroids to ride the bench is
Did he test
crazy.
positive for SARMs? Wasn't it SARMs? I'm
Yes,
pretty sure.
yes.
Why, Tristan? You're at the end of your career. I feel like this is if you talk about Tristan Thompson, like GOAT debate talking about LeBron, Jordan, like this guy had Tristan Thompson as his teammate. The guy was on SARMs. Like, this is what's gonna come up now. Why would he do this? Why?
I don't know, man. I don't know. There have been enough times over the past 15 years that when Tristan Thompson's name gets brought up, you just shake your head because you can't understand this man's decision making from relentlessly cheating on on Khloe Kardashian
Yes. Wow.
to switching hands from the at the free throw line. One of the worst jump shots we've seen in the past 2 decades. Just bonehead decision after bonehead decision. It's on brand. It's actually on brand. But
Another player who had a good career because of LeBron James.
they got multiple contracts because of LeBron James and then wants to talk like he's a serious winner. Tristan, we saw you before LeBron was on the team. Gosh, you were a disaster. Gosh, you were a disaster.
You were no starting center
No, sir.
contender.
No, sir. So it's over. Like Tristan,
Hang it up, man.
go sit next to Perk and
You make a great analyst, man.
go sit next to Perk and Richard Jefferson and try to keep the Perks away from you and call it a career. But to score 4 points and get slammed for steroid use is wild. All right, everybody.
Or
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here for the Swishlist Podcast, Season 2, Episode 9. This was a fun one. Please, if you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend. Share it with somebody that needs to know basketball. Share it with somebody that wants to have a good time, wants to get a good laugh in.
yes.
We'd appreciate it. And to anybody that is listening, we genuinely just appreciate you. We appreciate you taking the time to and spending it with us. There's a lot of shows you could be watching, a lot of podcasts you can listen to spend 40 minutes with us. Man, what a blessing on our end. So we appreciate you. Thank you. Roman, send us off.
Thank you, guys. We are on all your favorite platforms. Like Moses mentioned, just share. I mean, we're just trying to grow at this point, to get the NBA, especially during mid-season when we're at our lowest. Just talk a little basketball. Just enjoy the game. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're following. Make sure you're liking. If you're not, it's getting ridiculous. It's really getting ridiculous. Swishlist Podcast, we are out.